So, I should say this now, I live in a town that's seen better days. An old nuclear plant, built to power a nearby city, had closed in the 80s and our whole population went with it. We used to have a hospital, a gym, a Walmart, basically everything, but in the death spiral following the closing down of the plant, one business after another closed. Our original high school, built in a rush when the plant opened, collapsed when I was a young child. And the town had to rush to convert the first 2 stories of the now empty hospital into a makeshift school. 12 years later, there I was, about to graduate from that now not-so-temporary school. The other wings of the hospital had been thoroughly sealed off from the school part of the building to keep us out of it. Or, as I later found out, to keep whatever was in those wings from getting in. I was your typical dumb teenage boy, and my friends were a mix of equally dumb teenage boys, whom my dumbass wanted to impress. With our school being attached to an abandoned hospital, rumors and dares were constantly circulating about breaking in and exploring the sealed-off wings, but as best as we could tell, nobody had ever done it. They did a good job isolating us from the hospital. Solid concrete and steel had been used to block off the hallways and stairwells, which were then covered with drywall. It would blend in seamlessly if they'd had the funds to paint it. I joked throughout my high school career about being the second student to attempt breaking into the abandoned hospital. The first was the legendary Jeremy P., who allegedly got in so much trouble he was expelled and moved out of town the next day. Which stung, after 2 years of trying to get his number. Well, a few days before graduation, it got real. My friends officially dared me. Under the cover of darkness, camera in hand, I snuck out of my parents' house that night. It wasn't a far walk to school, but I'd never made it at night. I noticed how as I got close to the school, a looming 8-story building shaped like 3 sides of a rectangle, the background noises got quieter. The massive concrete walls and black windows must have absorbed all the sounds of birds chirping and lone cars driving along the distant highway. I snapped a photo looking up at the building's facade, dull and brutalist, with the occasional broken window. As for how I'd get in, I had a plan. There was a metal awning over a sealed-off side door, and if I jumped, I could climb onto the ledge of a broken window and use a rock to knock away any shards of glass still clinging to the sill. The awning was about 10 feet up, but parked next to it for the last few days was a broken-down van that was just high enough I could pull myself onto it. Once I was up, I got another photo, looking down on the parking lot. I looked up at the window and could just make out a fire sprinkler on the ceiling inside. I heaved myself up onto the ledge and peered in. The floor was covered in rust stains from rainwater that had gotten in and eaten away at the radiator. There was still a bed with disheveled sheets, and it looked like a raccoon or a bird had at some point made a nest in them. A bin in the corner was piled full of gowns, now faded to white with pale polka dots. Having forgotten a rock, I knocked a few shards of glass off the edge of the window with my camera and crawled through. So far, it wasn't too scary. In fact, the rush of doing what no student had accomplished before had my heart beating in excitement in the dim moonlight streaming through the window. I snapped a picture of the room, all the proof I'd need to solidify myself as king of the school. Out of the corner of my eye, the door to the room, cracked open, drew my attention. Behind it was an almost complete blackness. Getting into the window was one thing, but exploring the hospital, maybe finding bloodstains or getting up on the roof, was the real point in coming. What was I, a coward? I opened the door a bit more and peered through into a long hallway. It took my eyes a minute to adjust, but I saw a disordered, hastily abandoned scene. A bed half blocked one side of the hallway, and gowns and metal tools were thrown about on the floor. To the other side, the hallway took a sharp turn, and around the corner was nothing but pitch black. A little apprehensive, I chose the side with the bed. As I walked past it, I noticed something that gave me a slight chill. Scratches in the plastic on part of the frame, deep scratches. I pressed onward, passing a desk. I pocketed a pin, and a pack of cigarettes I found in a drawer. Paperwork had names and times listed on it, among other things in shorthand that I couldn't read. The hallway proved to just lead to more rooms, with cloudy, unbroken windows letting in the slightest bit of light. Gathering my confidence, I turned back toward the spooky hallway. As I peered around the corner into total darkness, I heard something. A distant wail. I shot backward and sprinted back to the room I'd come in through. I caught my breath, trying to rationalize what I'd heard. Probably a creak as the building settled. Or a fox. Or some other animal. At this point I knew the sensible thing was to turn around. I couldn't even take pictures of what I would find, since it was too dark. But my curiosity got the better of me. I edged along the wall back to the corner and peered around it. It was still and silent, eerily so, but that was how it should be, I reasoned. Feeling the wall as I went, I crept down the hallway until the wall turned into a corner. My foot hit something. Stairs. I climbed up the stairs carefully, my hand on the rail. By now, even with my eyes fully adjusted to the darkness, I was lucky if I could see something a foot from my face. Once I'd made it up a story, I paused and again heard a sound. A quiet shuffling around the corner to my right. Fear crept back into my chest. I knew it was something harmless, like a raccoon, but I was immobilized. At last, I remembered my camera had a flash. I had an idea. I'd step around the corner and take a picture with the flash on. In the brief flash of light, I could see it was something harmless, get an idea of the path in front of me, and keep going. I reassured myself and stepped around the corner. I held the camera up, flash, and my heart stopped. I saw the outline of a figure. Pale white, against a hallway of open, black doorways. Its eyes hollow, its hair long and matted, solid black. Its hands with uncannily long fingers. Fingers with sharp claw-like nails. I opened my mouth involuntarily, but only a hoarse gasp came out. I turned and ran, down the hallway in the other direction, until my outstretched hand hit a wall. I had been blinded by the flash and couldn't see that the hallway to my left had a window at the end, but I ran that way anyway, until finally, I saw the outside world. I looked behind me, heart beating, and saw nothing in the dim light. I looked to my left and saw an emergency stairwell. I wasn't saved, though. My heart sank as I realized it would take me down to a sealed-off wing. I would have no escape. My only choice was to go up, back into the pitch darkness. So I did, as far as I could. I knew I was on the 4th floor, and counting my turns, I ended up on the 8th. There were no windows on this floor, and the ceilings were low. I knew that from looking at the outside of the building. I'd have no way to tell in the moment, since I saw nothing but black. I felt my way along a wall, not knowing which way I was going. I started feeling closed doors along the wall. I eventually realized they had plaques, and I tried to feel the lettering with my fingers. Office, one said, in smaller lettering, DR. Stole, orthopedics. I kept going until I felt an open door. Knowing it was futile, but desperate, I reached for a light switch and flipped it on. Miraculously, it worked. A single one of the lights in the ceiling came on. I listened faintly and even thought I could hear a distant generator. I turned and closed the door as quickly as I could without making noise and locked it. The frosted glass gave me no view of the hallway. Inside the office was a desk. One chair behind it, 2 slightly less comfortable chairs in front of it. To my left, the room continued some distance, with 2 beds hidden away by curtains and a second, closed door to the hallway. Not much light reached over there. I sat down in one of the less comfortable chairs, afraid to choose the one where I'd be stuck behind the desk. I was trapped. I wasn't alone, though. I had started to feel a presence in the room as soon as I'd shut the door. As if compelled by some otherworldly force, I stood up and walked toward the first bed. I pulled the curtains aside. Nothing. Then to the second. Breath shaky, I pulled the curtain aside and saw a body. The face was contorted, staring directly at me. It wasn't very recognizable after a year had passed, but it was Jeremy. I realized he hadn't been expelled after all. And that wasn't why his family had moved away. I heard the scream again, much louder now, reverberate through the halls. I didn't even have time to think. I flew out of the office and saw in the faint light another switch in the hallway. I hit it, and dim emergency lights lit the way to a second stairwell, which I descended 2 steps at a time. I heard the sound of something dragging behind me, then the scream again, just behind me, so loud I couldn't think. In front of me was a window, dusty, 7 stories above the ground. Nowhere else to go, I leapt through it. I just woke up. It's been 2 days, apparently, but since I landed on soft ground and hit some branches on the way down, I got out with some broken bones and a concussion. As you can imagine, it wasn't the greatest experience waking up in another hospital. Thankfully, a nurse was quick to comfort me once she noticed I was awake. I'm writing this post as a warning. I got lucky, getting out alive, but next time you're thinking about poking around an abandoned building, maybe reconsider.